Zaffar Mohamed-Ghouse. He's come to talk to us today about challenges and opportunities in implementing geospatial standards and specifications. Do bear with us if this presentation is interrupted.
I'll try to finish before that.
Thank you.
Good day. Assalamu alaikum. Ni hao. Swadika. Ahlan wa sahlan. And welcome to this presentation. My name is Zaffar, and I'll talk about the challenges and opportunities on implementing geospatial standards and specifications, more from a policy and a governance perspective, a few ideas and lessons learned. So next slide, please. So in the 11th session of the UN-GGIM, this concept of geospatial ecosystem was presented in the UN. When people were talking about how do we move from the current spatial data infrastructure into an ecosystem approach, where we are also taking advantage of from the transition of the fourth industrial revolution, 4IR to 5IR. And this is one of the contributions to this paper that I did on this, and it has about 13 authors. So the world is more becoming an interconnected and adopting the concept of ecosystem, where it's going to need to have challenges generating large volumes of data, storing, managing, and sharing digital information. So when we talk about standards, I think it's more to have a clarity in the mind. And here's a taxonomy that I've put across, is that we do have international standards, such as ISO, we do have OGC, IHO, etc. And then from those standards are developed by these committees, and then the national organizations such as Standards Australia, or in a Saudi context, SASO, they adopt these standards and make it more available to the national, to the nation. And thereafter, the practitioners need these standards to go to the level of specification to apply for them in order to practice or in a production level. And thereafter, there are specific guidelines and then the standard operating procedures to see how these standards are complied and applied. So it requires a vital framework that aligns these practices. And again, how do we take it from, from survey its whole to the parts? And that's where, sorry, next slide, please. Sorry, I was talking about the framework. Yeah, so this was the framework I was talking about. I just realized. So this inverted triangle is that's where, how do we make it, possible and being followed through and implemented in business process. And that's always a challenge because we have national policies, but then it needs to disseminate to organizational policies in order to take full advantage of this implementation. Next slide. Obviously, we do have numerous international best practice standards and frameworks exist. A lot of documentation available and specifications are designed for authoritative, comprehensive, and self-contained. But again, it's where we find is, I think the technical community knows about this. It's more about the wider spread in the geospatial industry of how this needs to be adopted, even it's a small enterprise that they are able to know about these documents. There's a body of knowledge. Then how do we transform this knowledge into practice is current challenge. Going back to the United Nations Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, there's a standards pathways. There are 9 pathways, and in that journey, ISO, OGC, and IHO have nicely contributed to a document that talks about the adoption of standards and compliance mechanism. And this roadmap that has been created is for the countries, for their action plan, while they are designing their geospatial master plan, are able to take this direction to see that standards are integral part of the national planning. Standards are integral part of the delivery so that they are able to have this direction set, understanding the national needs, and be able to plan for change, and then taking those actions and then manage once they are developed and implemented. It's the management and then what outcomes. We need to measure how the standards have impacted. So this is a very good body of knowledge. I encourage countries that are not aware of that this body of work has been done, and it's quite a good framework for country-level action plans to utilize this. Next slide. So when we put a lens around what are the key challenges in implementing the geospatial standards, everyone wants standards. So next slide. Yeah. Thank you. So what are the key challenges we see? And the first and foremost which stands across is the lack of skills and training in understanding and implementing this. I'm more talking from production, from small to medium enterprises, where they have more number of professionals, sufficient skill set and training and develop, but from adoption and standards, we require the next generation to be trained on these journey in order to do. So they know about the documents, but they don't understand the content. And I think there is a call for action to build these training and expertise more into not only creating the awareness, but run a few, trainings and other programs. Regulatory and policy barriers, where I see here is the regulations are not updated as per the standards adoptions. There are varying policies in jurisdictions, and that's where I think which creates some inconsistencies. So again, I've been trained from London School of Economics, public policies, where you don't create a policy for policy purpose. A policy is created when a disruption and intervention happens, right? So that's how it is. But I think proactively the standards community work along with the policymakers in order to make sure, because there's always a catch-up of technology and policy. Again, is around the coordination across multi-level government on cross-sector collaboration of how do we take these implementation of standards? Mostly it's not about people don't want to do, it's more about the time taken to understand and implement. Then we have the data privacy, security concerns, and major when it comes into the applications, especially from a private sector side, the projects fail to recognize there is a cost in implementing these standards and always undermined. And when you look into large contracts and things, of course, the procurement says you shall conform to these standards, but then the lack of understanding from private sector in order to cost for that, they cost for the project management, they cost for the technology and capture, but they do not cost for the standards implementation. And often this is a big barrier and negotiations are done. So it's very undermined around the cost and resource constraints in implementing standards. And again, the complexity and technical barriers where we see is more around, especially for smaller organizations. Big organizations can adopt. It's more to small to medium enterprise who are the lungs of the geospatial industry. Ecosystems do not have these sort of resourcing, and that's where I think there's a community of practice that allows for the small to medium enterprise to take part and participate. Again, coming to legacy systems and interoperability issues, I think OGC has tried to resolve a few things, but I think more and more interoperability is required with the changing dynamics of the sensors and the concept of geospatial ecosystem. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight one of our case studies here from Australia, and some of my colleagues from Australia will recognize is that one of the things what we did here in Australia, apart from standards, the community under the ANZLIC, we developed a tool called MET-Tool. It's a simple tool, and I was very fascinated when I immigrated to Australia to look at this tool, and I myself have applied this tool in many of the projects that I have delivered from private sector. The tool is simple, is that you take the data, it looks forward towards its compliance and tells you that whether your data is compliant for 19115 or not. So the lessons I learned from that coming from India and then migrating to Australia and looking at it is a simple concept, a tool that allows people to have confidence, especially the industry, before they submit the data to the client, before they publish or before they share. They run this tool. It has pass and fail criteria, tells where it is compliant or not. A simple tool that really makes a difference. So what I understood from this particular example is that more and more the industry requires these sort of compliance tools so that they get the confidence inside or with their QA/QC processes. So then when they share the data, then they are very confident. Next slide, please. And here are the opportunities. As I spoke around the challenges, it's more around, I think there's a lot of initiatives on open data. There's willingness to collaborate. Geospatial is the nucleus of digital transformation. A lot of programs are coming across due to advancements in technology. There's also willingness to collaborate. And also now there is drive on capacity building everywhere. So I think this is our opportunities for geospatial standards and specification to be part of the dialogue, have a seat in the table, working along with your colleagues in the digital transformation, IT sector, who really are embracing geospatial as part of their workflows and processes. So this is a great opportunity for us as a community to work through.
Exercise. Within the building are required to participate. Please follow the instruction given by you within. I repeat, attention, attention. We are conducting an emergency evacuation exercise. All persons within the building are required to participate. Please follow the instruction given by you within. We are conducting an emergency evacuation. All persons within the building are required to participate. Please follow the instruction given by you within.
Yep. I just have 2 quick slides before the next announcement comes. Next slide, please. So we need to be agile. So the future trends is about the need for geospatial standards and specification. More countries are now looking towards their action plan thanks to the UNIGIF. Now everyone, the finance ministries, everyone is looking at it. And one of the components is standards. And it's about advancements in data connection, analysis, and standardization is one opportunity. Next one is around the geospatial applications, which requires these standards. Again, data privacy, cybersecurity, and regulatory compliance. And lastly, I think there's a lot of initiatives now on digital twins and smart infrastructure initiatives. And I think these are all emerging. And I think as a geospatial standards community, if we're able to be proactive and advance, I think we should be able to come up with a call for action in one way or other in order to really embrace these future trends. This is my last slide. I think just to have some reflections is that the utilization of standards depends on its clarity and ease of adoption. The standards might be good, but if it doesn't have clarity, then ease of adoption is always ambiguous. The standards developed need to be communicated more often, and geospatial project designs need to consider the cost. We need to create a local community. We have a global community, but I think we need a local community of practice as well, and that could be achieved through professional bodies. Develop training and capacity buildings. Policy always catches up, but we need to be proactive. I think we need more tools to see the compliance of standards. Thank you very much for your attention in this environment.